The Night of Merryvale, A Christmas Tale, Part 1, The Betrayal. Snow fell on Merryvale the day Gavin returned from the Northern Wars. Fat white flakes drifted down from a grey sky, settling on thatched roofs and cobblestone streets. He rode through the village gates on a brown mare, mud caking his boots and hope burning in his chest like a forge fire. The blacksmith's apprentice had left 3 years ago with nothing but a rusty sword and impossible dreams. Now he came back as a junior knight, bearing the king's colours on his surcoat and a leather purse heavy with silver coins at his belt. Enough to marry Helene. The village looked smaller than he remembered. The well in the town square where he'd drawn water as a boy seemed to have shrunk. The baker's shop where Helene's mother used to buy bread every morning still stood on the corner, smoke rising from its chimney. The smell of fresh loaves made his stomach growl after days of travel rations. She stood outside that very shop, her red wool cloak bright against the grey stone walls. Her dark hair fell loose around her shoulders, longer than when he'd left. When she saw him, her basket of bread tumbled from her hands, loaves rolling across the snow. She ran. He dismounted and caught her, spinning her around. Her laughter rang through the cold air, clear as church bells. Other villagers stopped to watch, smiling at the reunion. "You're back." She pressed her hands against his chest, feeling the solid reality of him through leather and wool. "You're really back. I thought the battles were so fierce. I heard stories about the Northern campaign. I told you I would return." He kissed her forehead, then her cheeks, breathing in the scent of cinnamon and pine that always clung to her hair from the spice merchants where she worked in winter. "I made a promise, didn't I? I have my knighthood now. I have money saved. We can marry before Christmas just like we planned 3 years ago." Her eyes shone with tears she refused to let fall. "My father will be so pleased. He asks about you every week, lights a candle at church and prays for your safety." They walked hand in hand toward her father's manor, a modest stone house at the eastern edge of the village, past the mill where the wheel turned in the half-frozen stream. Children playing in the snow called out greetings. Old women nodded from doorways. Gavin waved to the butcher, the cooper, the tanner, all familiar faces from his childhood. His best friend Devon stood by the well in the town square, a wooden bucket in his hands. He wore the blue tunic of the village guard, his sword belted at his waist. When he saw them approach, hand in hand, he set the bucket down carefully. Gavin raised his free hand in greeting, grinning so wide his face hurt. Devon smiled back and lifted his hand in return. But something flickered across his face first, something cold and quick as a blade slash. Then it was gone, and he turned away toward the guardhouse without another word. Gavin felt a prickle of unease run down his spine but pushed it aside. He was tired from the journey, seeing shadows where there were none. Lord Muriel received Gavin in his hall that evening. Tapestries hung on the stone walls, depicting hunting scenes and family crests faded with age. A fire crackled in the hearth large enough to roast a whole pig. The old man sat in a carved chair near the flames, his grey beard neat and trimmed, his left leg stretched out stiffly before him. He'd been a knight himself once, serving 3 kings, before a Frankish pike caught him in the knee during a border war and ended his fighting days. "So the blacksmith's boy wants to marry my daughter." Muriel's tone held no malice, only the dry observation of a man who'd seen much in his 60 years. "I'm a knight now, sir." Gavin straightened his shoulders, standing tall despite his exhaustion. "Sir Gavin of the King's Northern Guard. I can provide for her. I have a position in the royal service, a salary of 40 silver pieces per year, plus bonuses for successful campaigns. We'll have a good life, a safe life." Money matters less than character. Muriel poured wine from a silver pitcher into 2 cups, the red liquid catching the firelight like rubies. "But I won't pretend it doesn't matter at all. A wife needs security, children need food and shelter and prospects. You can provide these things." "I can, my lord, I swear it on my honor as a knight." "And you love her?" "Truly love her, not just the idea of her." "More than my own life, sir." Muriel studied him for a long moment with eyes that had seen through lies for 6 decades, then nodded slowly. Helene loves you. She's refused every other suitor these 3 years, and believe me, there have been many. Good men, wealthy men. She said her heart was spoken for. That matters more to me than silver or titles or fine words. You have my blessing, Gavin. Marry my daughter with my joy and my prayers. They drank to the engagement, the wine warm and spiced with cloves. Gavin felt like his chest might burst with happiness. 3 years of fighting in cold camps and muddy fields. 3 years of watching friends die and wondering if he'd survive to see home again. And it had all been worth it for this moment. I'll announce the banns this Sunday, Muriel said. We'll hold the wedding on the 23rd of December. That gives us 3 weeks to prepare properly. Is that acceptable? More than acceptable, my lord. It's perfect. When Gavin left that night, Helene walked him to the door. In the shadows of the entrance hall, away from her father's watchful eyes, she kissed him properly. Her lips tasted like honey wine and promises. 3 weeks, she whispered against his mouth. I can wait 3 weeks. After 3 years, 3 weeks should feel like nothing. It feels like forever already. The next morning, he reported to the barracks where the local guards trained and drilled. Captain Shan, a grizzled veteran with scars across his knuckles and a missing tooth, assigned him to the morning patrol and the evening watch. The pay wasn't much compared to his night's salary, but it would supplement their income nicely when they had a household to maintain. Devon worked there too as a senior guardsman. He'd risen through the ranks while Gavin was away, earning commendations for bravery during a bandit raid 2 summers ago. They'd been friends since boyhood, learning to fight with wooden swords in the blacksmith's yard, stealing apples from the merchant's cart, getting in and out of the kind of trouble young boys always found. Congratulations on the engagement, Devon said as they walked the eastern perimeter of the village that afternoon. His voice sounded flat, empty of the warmth that used to colour their conversations. Thank you, brother. Gavin clapped him on the shoulder. You'll stand with me at the wedding, won't you? I can't imagine doing it without my oldest friend beside me. Of course. I'd be honoured. They stopped at the eastern watchtower, a squat stone structure that overlooked the road. From here, you could see for miles in every direction. The road to Chesterland Falls, the capital city where the king held court, the forest to the north, dark with pine and oak, the hills to the south, rolling away toward distant mountains shrouded in winter mist. Do you remember when we were boys? Devon leaned against the cold stone, his eyes fixed on the horizon. We used to climb this tower and make plans. We said we'd both marry well, have estates of our own, be more than our fathers were, knights, lords, men of importance and influence. We've done well enough. Gavin frowned, sensing something beneath the words like ice beneath snow. You're a senior guard, respected and trusted by everyone in the village. I'm a knight in the king's service. That's more than most boys from Merryvale ever achieve in a lifetime. We should be proud of ourselves. You're marrying the Lord's daughter. Devon's jaw tightened, a muscle jumping beneath his beard. I'm marrying Fern the weaver. A good woman, certainly. Kind and capable. But there's a difference, isn't there? You'll be Lord Muriel's son-in-law. You'll inherit property when he dies. I'll always be just a guardsman drawing weekly pay. Fern is a wonderful woman, kind and skilled and beautiful in her own way. You're lucky to have won her heart. Many men tried. But she's not Helene. The words hung between them like frost crystals, sharp and cold and impossible to ignore. Gavin felt something shift beneath his feet, a foundation cracking that he'd thought was solid stone. You never said anything, Gavin said quietly, carefully. All those years growing up together. You never told me you had feelings for her. What was there to say? Devon pushed off from the wall, his hand resting on his sword hilt. Not a threat, just a habit from years of guard work. You saw her first at the Harvest Festival when we were 16. You courted her properly. You won her father's approval. I just watched from the side like always. I thought when you left for the wars, when years passed with no word, things might change, hearts might change. But she waited. She actually waited for you like something out of a bard's tale. I'm sorry. If I had known how you felt, what would you have done differently? Stepped aside? Let me court her instead. Devon's laugh was bitter as winter wind. No, you loved her too. You had every right to pursue her. This is just life, isn't it? Someone wins, someone loses, someone gets the girl and the estate and the happy ending. It doesn't have to be about winning and losing, doesn't it? Devon met his eyes, and Gavin saw something in them he'd never seen before. Something dark and hurting and dangerous. Don't worry about me, brother. I'll smile at your wedding. I'll toast your happiness. I'll mean it too, mostly. I genuinely hope you'll be very happy together. They finished the patrol in heavy silence. When they parted at the guardhouse, Devon's smile looked sharp enough to cut skin. 3 days later, soldiers from Chesterland Falls arrived at Gavin's door before dawn. 6 of them in the king's livery, carrying torches that cut through the darkness and weapons that gleamed with ill intent. They arrested him as he rolled out of bed, still half asleep and confused, his mind foggy. "What's the charge?" Gavin struggled against their iron grip as they bound his wrists with rough rope that bit into his skin. "What's happening? There must be some mistake. Treason against the crown." The lead soldier, a stern-faced woman named Beverly with lieutenant's insignia on her cloak, looked genuinely grim. "You're accused of conspiring to assassinate King Carlin. Multiple charges, plotting, planning, correspondence with known enemies of the realm." "That's insane. I've never done anything of the sort. I would never betray the king. I serve him. I fought for him for 3 years. Evidence was found in your quarters during a routine inspection. Letters detailing a plot against His Majesty's life, times, places, methods of assassination, all signed with your knight's seal. That's impossible. I haven't written any letters like that. Someone is lying. Someone planted evidence. Tell it to the magistrate at your trial." They dragged him downstairs and threw him in the village dungeon, a cold stone cell beneath the guardhouse that usually held drunks and petty thieves. The walls wept moisture from the underground springs. Rats scurried in the dark corners. A thin beam of grey morning light came through a barred window near the ceiling, barely enough to see by. Captain Shan came to see him that afternoon, his weathered face troubled and lined with concern. He stood outside the cell, gripping the bars with calloused hands. "I don't believe you did this," Shan said firmly. "I've known you since you were a boy stealing bread from the baker. You're loyal to your bones, honest almost to a fault. This isn't in your character at all. Then help me. Please, get me out of here before this goes any further. I can't. I wish I could, but the evidence is clear as day. Someone wants you destroyed, Gavin. Someone who knows how to forge documents convincingly and plant evidence where it will be found. Someone with access to your room and your knight's seal." The realization hit like a fist to the gut, driving the air from his lungs. "Devon, can you prove it? Do you have any evidence at all?" Gavin closed his eyes, thinking back over the past few days. He'd been careless, too trusting of old friendships and familiar faces. His room at the boarding house had no lock on the door because theft was rare in Merryvale. His knight's seal sat on the writing desk in plain view, where anyone could use it. Easy enough for someone to forge letters in handwriting similar enough to his own. Easy enough for someone to plant those letters where royal inspectors would find them during their routine checks of knights on leave. No, I can't prove anything. It's just suspicion and gut feeling. Then God help you, son, because I don't think anyone else can. Helene came that night, after Captain Shun bribed the guard to look the other way for 10 minutes. She slipped into his cell like a shadow, and he held her while she wept against his chest, her whole body shaking. "This is wrong," she said, her voice breaking on the words. "Everyone who knows you knows you're loyal. My father is writing to the king personally. He's calling in every old favor he's earned in 40 years of service. We'll fix this somehow. We have to. The evidence says otherwise. Gavin stroked her hair, memorizing the feel of it between his fingers. Someone was very thorough and very careful. Professional, almost. Devin. It had to be Devin. You suspected too? The way he looked at you when you came back. The way he's been coming around our house lately, offering sympathy and support, asking if there's anything he can do to help the family. It makes my skin crawl now that I understand what he's done. He loved you. I didn't realize how much until it was too late. That's not love. Love doesn't destroy. Love doesn't lie and scheme and ruin innocent lives for petty jealousy. She pulled back to look at him, her face fierce despite the tears. We'll prove your innocence. We'll find a way to expose him. But they didn't find a way. The trial was held 3 days later in the village square, quick and brutal as an execution. A magistrate from Chesterland Falls presided, a thin man with cold eyes and colder words. He read the charges in a voice that carried across the crowd. He presented the evidence with careful precision. Forged letters detailing assassination plans, all in handwriting that looked enough like Gavin's to fool anyone who didn't know him intimately, all sealed with his knight's seal, perfectly authentic. No one spoke in Gavin's defense except Helene, who stood before the crowd and swore on her mother's grave that he was innocent, that he was loyal and true and incapable of such treason. They dismissed her testimony. Women's words carried little weight in matters of state security and treason. Lord Muriel tried too, leveraging what remained of his old influence and reputation. But his voice had grown faint with age, and his power had waned with his fighting days. The magistrate listened politely and dismissed everything he said with bureaucratic efficiency. The sentence came down like a hammer on an anvil. Life imprisonment in Blackwater Keep, the fortress prison on the northern coast, where enemies of the crown were sent to rot in darkness until death claimed them. No appeals, no mercy, no hope of pardon or release. Helene came to his cell the night before they transported him away. The guard, an older man named Joe who'd known Gavin as a child, unlocked the door and gave them 5 precious minutes alone together. She pressed herself against his chest and wept like her heart was breaking in two, because it was. Gavin held her, trying to be strong for both of them, trying not to fall apart himself when his whole world was crumbling. "I'll wait for you," she whispered fiercely against his shirt. "However long it takes. 10 years, 20, 50. I'll wait, and I'll fight for your release, and I'll never stop believing in your innocence. No." He tilted her chin up with gentle fingers, looking into her tear-streaked face, memorizing every detail he could. The curve of her cheek, the shape of her mouth, the exact shade of her eyes. Don't waste your life waiting for something that might never happen. Don't put your life on hold for a dream. Live, Helene. Live fully and completely. Marry someone good, someone who can actually give you the life you deserve. Have children. Be happy. I love you. Only you. I love you too. That's exactly why I'm saying this. That's why I'm releasing you from any promise or obligation. You don't owe me anything. You never did. We made plans together, but those plans are dead now. I owe you everything. You're my heart, Gavin. Then let your heart heal. Let it love again when the time is right. Joe cleared his throat awkwardly from the doorway. Time's up, Miss Helene. I'm sorry, but I can't risk more. She kissed him one last time, desperately, like she was trying to pour her whole soul into that final contact. Then she pulled away and ran from the cell, her sobs echoing down the stone corridor long after she disappeared from sight. Gavin sat on the cold floor and let himself break apart completely. They transported him in chains the next morning, shackled in a prison wagon with 3 other condemned prisoners. The journey to Blackwater Keep took 5 brutally cold days. They travelled through snow and freezing rain, sleeping in the wagon at night, eating thin gruel twice a day. The other prisoners didn't speak much. One of them cried constantly, a soft, hopeless sound that wore on everyone's nerves. The fortress appeared on the 5th day, rising from the coastal cliffs like a nightmare carved from stone. Blackwater Keep, the name fit perfectly. The walls were black granite slick with sea spray and probably blood from ancient battles. Guard towers jutted up at intervals, manned by soldiers who watched with dead eyes. The waves crashed far below against razor-sharp rocks, grey and violent and endless. They processed him in a room that smelled like mold and despair and unwashed bodies. They took his clothes, his boots, everything that marked him as human. They gave him prison rags, thin and rough as burlap. They shaved his head with a dull razor that scraped and cut. They threw him in a cell on the 3rd level, a space no bigger than a horse stall, with walls that wept cold moisture and a single narrow window that showed only grey sky and darker water far below. The door slammed shut with terrible finality. The lock turned with a grinding sound, and Gavin was utterly, completely alone. Part 2. The Mentor. Time became meaningless in Blackwater. Days blended into weeks, weeks into months, until Gavin lost track entirely. The guards brought stale bread and thin soup twice a day, shoving bowls through a slot in the door without speaking or making eye contact. The cold seeped into his bones and settled there like a permanent ache. He lay on the stone floor and tried not to think about Helene, about the wedding that should have happened, about the life he'd lost to another man's jealousy. But he thought about it anyway. He thought about it constantly, obsessively, until the memories became knives that cut him from the inside. The despair was worse than the cold, worse than the hunger. It sat on his chest like a physical weight, making it hard to breathe, hard to care about surviving another day. He understood now why one of the prisoners in the wagon had cried all the way here. This place was designed to break the human spirit systematically and completely. 6 months passed before he heard the tapping on the wall. At first, he thought he was imagining it, that isolation had finally driven him mad. But no. Morse code, coming through the stone. Short taps and long taps, forming letters, forming words. Someone in the next cell was trying to communicate, reaching out across the darkness. Gavin tapped back with knuckles already raw from previous attempts to keep his mind occupied. The conversation took days to establish properly, short bursts between guard rotations when discovery was less likely and punishment wouldn't follow. The prisoner next door introduced herself as Loretta. She'd been a royal scholar before her arrest 10 years ago, charged with heresy for studying forbidden texts about old magic and older gods that the church deemed dangerous. "What are you in for?" She tapped out slowly, letter by careful letter. "Treason I didn't commit." "Ah, a classic tale. Betrayed by someone close to you?" "My best friend." "Love or money?" "Love. He wanted the woman I was going to marry." "The worst kind of betrayal. Money you can replace eventually. Love cuts much deeper and scars the soul." She became his lifeline over the following months, his only connection to sanity and humanity. Through the wall, she taught him things to keep his mind sharp and active. History of the realm, going back 500 years through wars and plagues and dynasties, mathematics and geometry, pure and beautiful and logical, military strategy from ancient wars fought by generals whose names had passed into legend, philosophy from scholars long dead, but whose ideas lived on, the art of patience, which she said was the hardest skill any prisoner ever had to master. "Why are you helping me?" He tapped one night when despair sat especially heavy. "Because I'm dying," came her response after a long pause. "And I don't want my knowledge to die with me. I want it to live on in someone." She'd been in Blackwater for 10 brutal years and hadn't lost her mind or her spirit or her essential humanity. She'd stayed sharp and focused by teaching herself everything she could, by turning her cell into a university of one, by refusing to let the prison destroy what mattered most. Now she was passing that hard-won education to Gavin, keeping his mind alive when his body wanted to surrender and give up entirely. "You can't let this place defeat you," she told him again and again. "They've taken your freedom and your future. Don't let them take your soul too. That's the only thing they can't have unless you give it to them willingly." One night, after nearly a year of daily conversations through the wall, she told him about the secret. "There's something you should know," she tapped carefully, "about the king's family, about a fortune that no one knows exists anymore." Gavin pressed his ear to the cold stone, listening intently to the slow, deliberate taps. 10 years ago, before my arrest, I was tutor to the king's younger brother, Prince Charlton. He was ambitious beyond measure, brilliant but ruthless. He wanted the throne for himself and thought he deserved it more than his older brother. He tried to take it by force. I remember hearing about that. There was a battle. The prince lost and fled. Yes, he fled after his defeat, and the king's men hunted him for months through every province. They finally cornered him in the mountains near the northern border. He died fighting rather than surrender. What does this have to do with a fortune? Before Charlton fled the capital, he came to me in secret one last time. He'd been preparing for the possibility of failure. He'd stolen a dragon's hoard from the old watchtower ruins near a village called Merryvale, ancient gold from centuries past. He buried it in an iron chest, sealed it with what magic he knew, and drew a detailed map to its exact location. Gavin's heart stopped beating for a moment. Merryvale, his village, his home. He gave me the map for safekeeping. He said if he died, I should give it to someone worthy, someone who would use the gold for good rather than evil or personal glory. Then he left, and I never saw him again. When I was arrested a week later on charges, I still don't fully understand. I hid the map in my quarters before they took me. It's still there, hollowed out inside a book. The gold is still buried where he left it. Hundreds of thousands in ancient dragon coins, maybe more. No one knows it exists. Why are you telling me this now? Because I'm dying. Lung fever. I can feel it in my chest, getting worse every day. The coughing brings up blood now. And because you're young enough and strong enough and you still have fight left in you somewhere, if you can escape this place, if you can find that gold, you could reclaim your life. You could have real justice instead of rotting here forever for crimes you didn't commit. No one escapes Blackwater. It's impossible. I know a way. It's dangerous, and you'll probably die trying, but it exists. Over the next 2 weeks, while her coughing grew worse and her taps grew weaker and less frequent, Loretta told him everything in careful detail. The old section of the keep, abandoned 50 years ago after a catastrophic fire. The ancient drainage tunnels that led directly to the sea, built centuries back by clever engineers to prevent flooding during storm season. How to navigate the tides without drowning in the dark. Where exactly the map was hidden in her old quarters in the Royal Library at Chesterland Falls. The precise location near Merryvale where the gold lay buried, marked by 3 ancient oak trees and a flat stone carved with a dragon symbol. You'll have to wait for exactly the right moment, she told him. A major storm when the guards are distracted and staying inside, when the tides are pulling out to sea instead of pushing in, when you're strong enough to swim. How will I know when that moment comes? You'll know it in your bones. You'll feel it. Trust your instincts when the time comes. And what about you? Will you try to escape too? I'll be dead by then. This fever is killing me faster than I thought it would. I have days left, maybe a week at most. My time is over, but yours isn't. I'm sorry. You don't deserve this. None of us deserve what we get, good or bad. We just have to make the best of it. She paused, gathering strength for more taps. Promise me something important, though. What? Don't let revenge consume you. I can hear it clearly in your taps when you talk about the man who betrayed you. The anger, the hate, the need for vengeance. Those emotions are pure poison. They'll destroy you worse than this prison ever could. If you escape, if you find the gold and reclaim your freedom, use everything for good. Build something meaningful. Don't waste it all on vengeance that will leave you hollow. I'll consider your advice carefully. That's all I can ask. That's all anyone can ask. She died 3 nights later. Gavin heard the death rattle in her breathing around midnight, then silence that stretched forever. He wept for a woman he'd never seen, who'd given him hope and knowledge and a future when he had absolutely nothing left. The guards came for her body in the morning. He heard them unlock her cell, heard their casual cursing as they carried her out like garbage. Then, emptiness. The cell next to him stood vacant for weeks, but she'd given him something more precious than gold. Knowledge, hope, a detailed plan, a reason to survive. It took him 3 more months to prepare everything carefully. He stole a fork from his meal tray one day when the guard was careless and distracted, hid it in a crack in the stone wall. Over long weeks, he bent and shaped it into a crude lockpick, testing it again and again. He studied the guard rotations obsessively, memorizing every pattern, every change in shift, every moment of vulnerability. He exercised in his cell when he was alone, doing push-ups and squats and stretches, building back the strength he'd lost to starvation and inactivity. He waited for the right moment, the perfect storm. It came in late autumn, 18 months after his imprisonment began. Dark clouds rolled in from the sea, bringing winds that howled like demons and rain that fell in solid sheets. The guards huddled inside the keep, leaving the outer corridors less watched than usual. The tide was pulling strongly out to sea, just as Loretta had described. Everything aligned perfectly. Gavin's hands shook as he worked the lock with his makeshift pick, sweat running down his face despite the cold. It took 10 minutes of careful manipulation, his fingers cramping. Then the mechanism clicked. The door swung open with a creak that sounded impossibly loud. He crept through the dark corridors, following Loretta's directions from memory. Left at the 3rd junction. Down 2 levels using the servants' stairs. Through the door marked with a faded red cross. The old section of the keep smelled like decay and salt and ancient rot. Water dripped constantly from the ceiling. Moss grew thick on the walls. He found the drainage tunnel behind a collapsed section of wall, exactly where she'd said it would be. Water rushed through it with terrible force, black and freezing and violent. He could hear the sea beyond, roaring like a beast. Gavin stood at the edge and thought about Helene one last time. About the life they should have had. About justice and revenge and everything Loretta had said about poison and vengeance. Then he jumped into the darkness. The current seized him immediately, slamming him against stone hard enough to crack ribs. He couldn't see anything, couldn't breathe, couldn't think beyond the next second. The tunnel twisted and turned like a snake, scraping skin from his arms and back. His lungs screamed desperately for air, just when he thought he'd die. When his vision started to fade to black, the tunnel spat him out into the open sea. He surfaced, gasping and choking on salt water. The storm tossed him like driftwood in a flood. Waves crashed over his head again and again. He swam toward the distant shore with everything he had left, his muscles burning with exhaustion, his body going numb from the cold that seeped into his core. Finally, his feet touched sand. He crawled onto the beach and collapsed face down, coughing up seawater, his body shaking violently with cold and shock and relief. He woke to pale dawn light and the cry of gulls circling overhead, alive, free, reborn into a world that had written him off as dead. Part 3. The Gold and Return. Gavin made his way to Chesterland Falls on foot, following the coast road. 8 days of walking from dawn to dusk, stealing food from farms, sleeping in barns and ditches. He looked like a madman or a beggar, his prison rags torn and filthy, his face gaunt, his head still shaved from his processing at Blackwater. People crossed the street to avoid him. Dogs barked. Children pointed and whispered. At the Royal Library, he found Scholar Edmund living in Loretta's old quarters. The old man listened to his story, then helped him retrieve the map from its hiding place inside a hollowed book. "I need work to earn clothes and a horse," Gavin said. Edmund hired him to transcribe manuscripts. After 10 days of 16-hour workdays, the scholar gave him enough coins for a cheap horse and basic supplies. Gavin rode north through 2 nights without stopping. He found the forest near Merryvale, the 3 ancient oak trees, the carved stone, dug 3 feet down with his bare hands, and unearthed an iron chest. Gold coins gleamed in the afternoon sun, more wealth than he'd ever imagined possible. But he couldn't just appear wealthy. He needed legitimacy that no one could question. He rode back to the capital. King Carlin held court every 3rd day. Gavin waited in the crowd, watching everything carefully. Then he saw it happen. A nobleman dropped white powder into the king's wine cup when the cupbearer turned away. Gavin didn't think or hesitate. He ran forward, shouting a warning, knocked the cup from Carlin's hand just as the king raised it to his lips. Guards slammed him down. A sword pressed his neck. "Wait!" Charles, the king's advisor, knelt by the spilled wine, sniffed it. Nightshade, enough to kill. "Release him," the king commanded. Gavin told his story, the false accusation, Blackwater, his escape, his innocence. "This will be investigated," the king said. "If you're telling the truth, justice will be done." The investigation took 12 days. They found proof. Arrested Devon. He confessed within an hour. King Carlin summoned Gavin to the throne room. "You have suffered injustice. You saved my life. I grant you full pardon, your knighthood restored. I grant you the estate of Highridge outside Merryvale, 50,000 gold pieces in value. You are now Lord Gavin. I also appoint you to the Royal Protectorate." Gavin had won justice. Now he could return home. Part 4. All hope is lost. Gavin returned to Merryvale 2 weeks before Christmas wearing fine clothes, leading a procession. The village stared and whispered. He took residence in the Highridge Manor on the hill. Captain Shan visited that afternoon. Helene never married. Refused every suitor. Works at the church now, helping the poor. That evening Gavin walked to Muriel's manor. Helene stood in the garden. She turned when she heard his footsteps. "Gavin." His name sounded like a prayer. "Every day in Blackwater I thought about you. They told me you died 6 months ago." She walked toward him slowly. "You're different. Harder. There are new scars. Are you still the man I loved?" "I don't know. Am I?" She touched his face. "Yes. You're still there." He held her, breathing in cinnamon and pine. Lord Muriel appeared at the door. "Come inside. It's too cold for reunions in the garden." They sat by his fire and talked for hours. "I'd like to marry your daughter," Gavin said finally. "Again, if she'll have me." "Of course I'll have you," Helene said, laughing and crying. "Then you have my blessing," Muriel said. "Again." They set the wedding for Christmas Day. Gavin threw himself into preparation. But at night, alone in his manor, darker thoughts crept in like poison. Devon was in exile in the mines. Suffering, yes. But alive. It wasn't enough. Not for 2 years stolen. Not for what he'd done. Gavin began making inquiries. He had resources now. Money. He could hire assassins who worked across oceans. He sent letters using false names. Began planning the murder in earnest. The thoughts consumed him. At dinner with Helene, he was distracted. During wedding preparations, his mind was elsewhere. On December 23rd, 2 days before the wedding, Helene came to his manor unannounced. Found him in his study, bent over maps, letters spread across his desk, detailing Devon's location and assassination plans. "What are you doing?" she asked from the doorway. He gathered the papers quickly. Nothing. Just correspondence. "Don't lie to me." She picked up a letter before he could stop her. Read it. Her face went pale. "You're hiring assassins to kill Devon." Helene, you're planning murder, even though he's already in exile. Even though his life is already miserable, you want him dead. He deserves it for what he did to us. Maybe he does. She dropped the letter. But what does that make you? What kind of man murders someone because he can't let go? A man who demands real justice? No, a man consumed by hate. Tears filled her eyes. I waited 2 years for you. Do you understand? Every single day I chose to believe you'd come back. I refused good men who could have given me a safe life. I turned them all away because I loved you. I know that. Do you really? Her voice rose. I grieved when they told me you were dead. I went to church every day and lit candles for your soul. I wore your ring hidden under my dress because it was all I had left. I wanted to die because living without you hurt too much. Helene, please. And now you're back, free, wealthy, a lord. We can have everything we dreamed of. But you're not here. You're wherever Devin is, in that dark place of revenge and murder. And I can't follow you there. I won't. He has to pay. He is paying. She was shouting now, tears streaming. Every day in those mines he pays. But it's not enough for you. You won't be satisfied until he's dead. Until you've become exactly what he accused you of being, a traitor, a villain. That's not fair. Isn't it? I love you. I've always loved you. But I won't marry a man so consumed by hatred he can't see what's right in front of him. I won't spend my life with someone who chooses revenge over me. You're giving me an ultimatum. Yes. She met his eyes. Choose. Right now. Revenge or me? The past or the future? What's it going to be? He stared at her. All he had to do was promise to stop. But the anger burned so hot. He stopped. I can't. I'm sorry. I can't just forget what he did. The light in her eyes died. She nodded slowly. Then we're done. The wedding is off. Don't try to see me. I should have moved on 2 years ago. She took off her engagement ring, set it on his desk next to the assassination plans. Then she walked out. He stood frozen, listening to her footsteps fade. The front door closed. He'd lost her. Not to Devin's schemes, but to his own choices. He sank into his chair and stared at the ring. He'd won his freedom, his wealth, his reputation, and destroyed the only thing that mattered. The next day was Christmas Eve. Gavin woke alone. Lord Muriel came that morning, stern-faced. My daughter came home in tears. She told me what you're planning. I'm sorry. Are you? You chose exactly what you wanted. Revenge over love. You don't understand. Don't I? I spent 30 years as a knight. I saw men consumed by vengeance. I've seen what hate does. It hollows them out until there's nothing left but rage and regret. Devin deserves to pay. He's already paying. But that's not enough. It'll never be enough. You'll kill him and realize the emptiness is still there. Revenge doesn't heal wounds. It creates new ones. I gave you my blessing twice, Muriel continued. Instead, you've broken her heart. Stay away from her. You've made your choice. Live with it. The old man left. Gavin spent the day alone, staring at the letters and maps. This is what he'd chosen. It felt hollow, meaningless. Night fell. Below, lights glowed from windows. Families preparing for Christmas. Church bells rang. Captain Shan appeared around midnight. You're a fool. I know. She loved you, and you threw it away. I don't expect you to understand. I understand perfectly. You're scared. Scared of being happy. Scared that if you let go of the anger, there'll be nothing left. How do I let it go? You decide the future matters more than the past. You forgive, not for him, for yourself. What if I can't? Then you'll spend the rest of your life alone, wealthy and miserable. Shan left. Gavin sat in darkness thinking about Helene, about the life they could have had, all gone because he couldn't let go. Loretta's words came back. Hate is poison. She'd been right. He'd survived Blackwater only to poison himself. He stood and walked to the fireplace, picked up the letters, the maps, stared at them. Then he heard screaming from the village. Part 5. The Dragon. The dragon descended from the night sky like nightmare-made flesh. Black scales reflecting moonlight, wings blocking out stars. It landed in the square with an impact that cracked cobblestones and shattered windows. Its roar split the night. Gavin grabbed his sword and ran, down the hill toward chaos. People fled in every direction. The dragon's head swung, tracking movement. It inhaled. Gavin saw the glow. Fire washed across the marketplace. The heat hit him hard. Captain Shan appeared at his side. Where did it come from? Doesn't matter. Get people to safety. They herded villagers toward the church. The dragon focused on children trapped near the well. Helene's students, frozen with terror. The dragon started toward them. Gavin ran, putting himself between creature and children. Get to the church! The children scattered. The dragon's eyes fixed on Gavin, jaws opened, teeth like swords. The creature was massive, armored with scales. But those children needed time. The dragon's head came down. Gavin dove, rolled, slashed. His blade scraped off scales. The creature's tail caught him in the ribs. He flew backward, hit the ground hard. He struggled up, gasping. The dragon advanced. Then he saw her. Helene, running toward an elderly woman who'd fallen. The woman couldn't stand. The dragon saw them, turned, started toward them. No! Gavin forced himself to move. No! He ran toward the dragon, toward Helene. The creature's head swung toward the women. Gavin threw himself in front of them. Get her out of here. Gavin, you'll die. I know. Go. Time slowed. The dragon's head filled his vision. Its breath was hot and rancid. In that moment, clarity hit like lightning. This was what mattered. Not revenge. This. Protecting the woman he loved. Being the man he'd wanted to be. If he was going to die, at least it was for something real. He remembered his training. Dragons had one weakness, the soft flesh under the jaw. Gavin planted his feet and waited. The dragon's jaws came down. At the last second, he thrust upward with everything he had. His blade sank deep. The dragon shrieked. It reared back. Gavin held on, twisting, driving deeper. Black blood poured from the wound, burning his skin. The dragon thrashed. Gavin felt the blade reach something vital. The dragon's movements became weak. It collapsed. The impact cracked cobblestones. Gavin pulled his sword free and staggered back. Silence. Then cheering erupted. He turned. Helene stood 5 feet away, tears streaming. You saved me. After everything, you still saved me. Of course. His legs felt weak. I'll always save you. Even if you hate me. I don't hate you. I could never hate you. I'm sorry. You were right. I chose wrong. I was going to kill Devon, and it wouldn't have fixed anything. When I saw that dragon coming for you, nothing else mattered. Not the past, not the anger, just you. And I realized what an idiot I've been. She threw her arms around him. He held her, something frozen inside finally thawing. I burned them. Before the dragon came, all the letters, all the plans. I let it go. I chose you. She pulled back. Are you sure? I'm sure. Devon's in exile. That's enough. I don't need revenge. I just need you. Then you have me. You've always had me. They kissed. Captain Shan approached, grinning. That was the bravest thing I've ever seen. You killed a dragon on Christmas Eve. The bards will sing about this. Villagers crowded around, thanking him. He'd saved the whole village. Lord Muriel pushed through the crowd, looked at Gavin, at his daughter in Gavin's arms, at the dead dragon. Well, I suppose the wedding is back on? Gavin looked at Helene. Is it? If you'll still have me." "Always." King Carlin arrived 3 days later. He surveyed the dragon corpse. "Lord Gavin, you saved an entire village. I'm granting you the title of Dragon Knight. Only 4 men in history have held that honor. I also grant you the estate of Riverbrook, another 50,000 gold pieces." That night, Gavin told Helene everything. About Loretta, the map, the dragon's hoard, using it for good. "How much gold are we talking about?" Helene asked. "Enough to rebuild the entire village twice over. More than enough." She was quiet for a moment, then took his hand. "The dragon attack. So many were hurt. Old Marjorie's burns won't heal properly. The Miller boy broke his leg, and it's set wrong because we have no surgeon. People die here from things that could be treated in the capital." "What are you thinking?" he asked. "A medical house. A real one, with a trained physician. Not just the herbalist who does her best, but learned everything from her grandmother." Her eyes brightened. "We could save lives, Gavin. Children who would die from fever, women who die in childbirth, workers injured in accidents." He nodded slowly. "And a school. A proper one. So children like I was, blacksmiths' apprentices and weavers' daughters, can learn to read and write, can have choices beyond what their parents did. You'd do that. Loretta saved my life by teaching me through a wall. She gave me knowledge when I had nothing. I want to give that to others." He looked at her. "This gold came from a prince who tried to take the throne through violence. Let's use it to build something instead of destroy. Let's make sure no child in Merryvale has to choose between education and food." Helene kissed him. "That's the man I fell in love with. That's who you really are." They spent the rest of the night making plans, sketching rough layouts for buildings, calculating costs. When dawn came, they had filled 3 pages with ideas. The treasure that had once belonged to a traitor would now heal and teach and give hope. They married on New Year's Day. The village church was decorated with pine boughs and white flowers. Candles burned in every window. Everyone attended. Lord Muriel walked Helene down the aisle, beaming. When he placed her hand in Gavin's, his eyes were wet. "Take care of her. She's my greatest treasure. I know I will." The priest spoke about love and commitment, about bonds forged in adversity. When he asked if anyone objected, silence filled the church. Gavin slipped the ring onto Helene's finger. She did the same for him. When the priest pronounced them husband and wife, the church erupted in cheers. At the feast, Gavin raised his glass. "I spent nearly 2 years in darkness. I lost faith, but I'm here because of people who never gave up on me. My wife, who waited. Captain Shan, who believed. Lord Muriel, who stood by me. And Loretta, who taught me that revenge is poison while love is worth fighting for." He paused. "I chose wrong. I chose revenge. And I lost everything. When that dragon attacked, I realized how close I came to destroying my own life. Not because of prison, but because of my own bitterness." Helene squeezed his hand. "So here's my toast. To second chances, to forgiveness, to letting go so you can hold the future, to choosing love, even when hate seems easier, and to my wife, who loved me enough to walk away when I needed that lesson." "To second chances," everyone echoed. "To love." They danced until dawn broke over Merryvale. When the last guest left, they stood on the balcony watching the first sunrise of the new year paint the sky. "Do you ever think about him?" Helene asked quietly. "Devon?" "Sometimes. But it's a scar now, not an open wound. Part of my past, but it doesn't control my future." "Good. I don't want our marriage built on ashes of revenge. I want it clean and new. It will be, I promise." She smiled and kissed him. They went inside, closing the door on the cold and the past. The fire burned warm and bright. This was their home, their life, their chance to build something worth all the suffering. And this time, Gavin wouldn't waste it. He'd learned his lesson. He'd chosen right when it mattered most. In Merryvale, on this first day of the new year, Love had won after all. The end.